It's official. Video games are the biggest entertainment medium on the planet.
Thousands of titles.
Millions of players.
Billions of dollars.
But that's not important.
Because it's not the big numbers that make gaming great.
It's the experience.
You already know that, and so do we.
This isn't another show just trying to justify gaming. What's there to justify? It's awesome.
It is.
No, we're here to cut through the noise.
And speak from our hearts.
About the games that we love.
And even those that we don't.
Because we love games just as much as you.
From Wii Sports
To esports.
From the platformer
To the puzzler.
all are welcome in this Video Game Nation. Welcome to Video Game Nation's Games of 2014, now with 34% brand new content. Now, Space Year 2014 was supposed to be the year of no games, when the likes of Batman Arkham Knight, The Witcher 3, Evolve, Tom Clancy's The Division, and even the mighty Captain Toad Treasure Tracker were all shunted to Stardate 201.5. The Doommongers declared that this year would be more barren than Justin Lee Collins' work schedule. Fortunately, rumours of 2014's gaming drought were greatly exaggerated. This was a year of outstanding originals, super sequels, radical reboots, top-notch tie-ins, and incredible indies. This episode of Video Game Nation, then, is a celebration of a year that didn't let a few no-shows ruin the party. Let's kick things off by looking back at one of my favourites of 2014, the undisputable king of kart racers, Mario Kart 8. Whatever Nintendo would have you believe, this is the year of Luigi. After 30 years in a supporting role, Mario's gangly brother finally stole the spotlight when a certain YouTube clip revealed a newfound attitude. That malicious glare, that momentary lapse of Luigi's trademark mix of good cheer and trembling cowardice embodies the true spirit of Mario Kart, one where even the most pure-hearted of players will inevitably succumb to the guilty delight of Schadenfreude. Schadenfreude, pleasure derived from another's misfortune. It's Mario Kart all over, isn't it? Watching your driver wriggle with joy as a lagging opponent spins on a carefully dropped banana skin, smashing a red shell into an airborne rival and watching them plummet to their doom, narrowly rounding the blast radius of a detonated blue shell to claim first place. Feels great, doesn't it? Until you're on the receiving end, of course. Whether experienced as perpetrator or victim, these moments are part of the slapstick lifeblood that courses through Mario Kart 8's Dayglow veins. It's a game of glorious give and tragic take, as Mario Kart has always been, but helplessly power drifting into your own ricocheting green shell has never looked so beautiful. Nintendo may have taken longer than absolutely necessary to join the HD generation, but there's no questioning that it was worth the wait. Following in the footsteps of Pikmin 3 and Super Mario 3D World, Mario Kart 8 dazzles with its flawless appreciation of colour, infectious personality, and incredible attention to detail. Luigi's now infamous scowl encapsulates this perfectly. It's amazing what effect even the briefest flash of humanity can have in a world where the heroes are usually so gosh darned happy. Not that I'm saying that the other characters aren't relatable in their own way too. Take the Koopa Trooper. I usually pick him because his day job largely involves being stepped on and kicked around, so I figure it's only fair that he gets a chance to one-up Bowser and Mario on the track. I don't think I'm alone in choosing characters I can relate to either.
I've always been Kong. Like, I go Wario now and again because he's funny, but yeah, Kong's always been my guy, like, ever since the first time I played. I don't really know what that says about me because I probably picked him. I'm quite hairy now, but I probably picked him at a time where I had no hair. So maybe it was like an aspirational thing. I was like, one day, I want to be as hairy as Kong.
My favourite Mario Kart character, it's always been the same for every iteration, it's Toad. And sort of the professional answer is because, you know, he's very fast and light and, you know, fun to handle. The real answer is I just think he's cute.
You'll notice I've not talked a great deal about how Mario Kart 8 actually plays. I guess that's because the clue's in the title. For all its high-definition polish and the new F-Zero Light anti-gravity gimmick, the racing is reassuringly familiar. This is still a racer for which brake is a four-letter word, and a corner left undrifted is a boosting opportunity wasted. Are 150cc races still populated by opposition who only exist to crush your soul? Definitely. Will you fall off Rainbow Road a lot? Certainly. Is it still best enjoyed in the company of others? Absolutely, and while there's still nothing quite like getting 3 friends round to play into the wee hours, Mario Kart 8's online offering is also incredibly robust. The ability to create custom tournaments is a real high point, as is the fact that you can race online with another player sat next to you. Of course, not everything's peachy. The decision to use racetracks in battle mode instead of dedicated arenas is a terrible idea. It just doesn't work. And talking of things that don't work, what's with all the pointless characters clogging up the roster? Pink Gold Peach, Toadette, Baby Rosalina, what will they think of next?
You know, they have baby versions of the main cast, but now Baby Mario himself, I think, is perceived as one of the main Mario characters. What about a baby Mario, like a fetal Mario, or maybe like a single cell, a zygote? What? I don't know anything about sex.
The short story is that Mario Kart 8 maintains the series' position as the king of the genre it created, despite the efforts of many others to steal its crown. And trust me, many have tried.
Hello, television friend. Hi, Def. High five. Conventional wisdom says that most modern games are huge, sprawling, open-world affairs that rejoice in titles like Call of Metal of Gears of Modern Warfare, Godmother 9, Grand Theft Halo. You know what I mean. Big open-world adventures that rejoice in a colour palette so limited they should probably have just called it 50 Shades of Grey. Which is not a bad idea, because then the woman who wrote that book could have used the title she'd wanted. Harry Potter and the Goblet of You Want to Do What to my what? Which brings us to one of my favourite games of 2014. It's colourful and cartoonish in a world of boring realism. Ladies and gentlemen, the ADD adventure that looks like a kid's been at it with the crayons, Sunset Overdrive. Sunset Overdrive is the eye-popping, car-hopping button basher from Insomniac Games, who made Spyro, Ratchet & Clank and the Resistance series. It's meant to be a punk rock cartoon, even being pitched by Insomniac's creative director Marcus Smith as what if Iggy Pop was the last man on Earth? You are a janitor in Sunset City, working at the launch of Overcharge, the newest energy drink from Fizco, when suddenly mutants overrun the place and it's time to run, flip, thump, shoot, freeze and blow up a game world where friction is your friend, physics are jelly, and everything the Looney Tunes ever told you is completely true. Yep, it's a zombie survival game, but with 2 twists. The zombies are fueled by Red Bull, and you have superpowers. Why? Because you play video games, of course. From the plot to the setting to the gameplay, Sunset Overdrive is a Frankenstein's monster of design influences and pop culture winks. Is there an original concept in there? Well, aside from the initial happy punk meets the apocalypse, not really. This is a joyous triumph of copy and paste. You'll rail grind in a colour-soaked world like in Sega's Jet Set Radio, complete gory challenges like in Mad World, fall off a ledge? Those portals look a bit familiar. This is a game that knows it's a game and just wants you to grin for a few hours, so it's built from references to other games with a couple of jokes you've heard before, but it's nice to hear again. Your dodge is either Sonic the Hedgehog spin dash or a full-body Hadouken. You can run on water when Christ could just walk, and if the game was serious, why would it have a gun called the Flaming Compensator? How does Sunset Overdrive play? Like Sonic the Hedgehog at his fastest, like a pinball machine where it's constantly multi-ball, with a framework that's far cleverer than you expect. Billed as an open-world adventure, Sunset Overdrive is that, but with zero consequences. Not only can you never die, you rarely get sent back to the start of a mission. This is a game that wants you playing and happy the whole time. When you travel, all that bouncing and the best wall-running mechanic I've ever used keep you propelled and interested, even if you end up not actually exploring much, just picking up a power-up and accidentally hurtling your way to wherever the game wanted you to go. This is the only game ever to send me somewhere I didn't want to be and not have me resent it. You know, like a stepfather who was right about summer camp. Trouble is, half of what it wants you to do isn't very interesting. The single player's first hour is loaded with fetch quests, which are often pretty dull reasons to head into the game world. That said, once you're on the mission where you actually play fetch with a robot dog death machine, that earlier repetition is kind of forgiven. There's also 859 collectibles to pick up while you're pinging off the walls. Is this a fun though predictable feature, or proof that games have finally reached collectible overkill?
With collectibles, like, it's just something I've never been into. Like, I think it just wrecks games now. Maybe with something like Sunset Overdrive, obviously it works, so that's the point of it.
It's not to my taste, and I know it's not to a lot of people's taste. It's kind of busy work.
Like, I've got lots of friends who had to 100% complete Grand Theft Auto, and they couldn't sleep. They couldn't sleep because they're thinking, oh, I'm on 99%.
To be honest with you, I think the only game where I've collected every single thing is Donkey Kong Country on the SNES. And when you complete that, you get 101% with a little asterisk next to the percentage. And I have to say, getting that asterisk was probably the best moment of my life.
Sunset Overdrive is great fun. It's fast, bouncy, plays like several other games, references a fistful of old media, look for the groanable nod to Breaking Bad, and then wraps it all in a frantic, eye-searing package. It's chock full of side missions, fetch quests, upgrades and things to check off. Some are dull, some are amazing, and through it all, it wants to remind you it's just a game. You could say this is the illegitimate kid of Scott Pilgrim or Sonic 2 brought to 3D life, but the most accurate thing I've heard is from my wife, who took one look and said, "Is this GTA for kids?" I'd say, yes.
Yeah, did you see that? You're lucky I was here.
A brash, noisy game full of unsubtle, self-referential humour and non-stop violence. Can't imagine why it's John's favourite game of the year. Join us after the break where we'll find out Aoife Wilson and our expert panel's picks of 2014.
But it all just boils down to the best, like, one-on-one fighting game I've played in forever.
Welcome back. Now, our expert panel usually talk about whatever game we tell them to talk about, so it's a special treat we've allowed them to discuss their personal picks of 2014. Just don't get any ideas above your station. Okay, guys?
My game of the year is Wolfenstein: The New Order. I say that partly because I think no one else will say it, but mostly because it's such an amazing first-person shooter. It's really it's very old school in how it treats you, you as a player. But it's a game that no one really expected much from. And when it came out, it's a game that had no business being that good. It's just really, the weapons just make you feel super powerful. The shooting is just really satisfying. It's got an absolutely insane story, and the pace of it, the speed of it, the levels aren't too long. It doesn't drag you through missions that you don't want to do. It never dangles an objective in front of you and it makes you go along infinite detours to get to it. It says, go kill this guy, go blow this thing up. Now go into space, to the moon, to the lunar base. Now go shoot this commander. And it's non-stop, amazing fun.
I've got a couple of games of the year, I think, and for different reasons. On, main console, South Park: Stick of Truth, because for me, that was like playing. For me, that was like playing a South Park episode from when I was in year 9. It felt, I haven't watched South Park religiously for a good few years, but that for me felt like proper old school South Park, the way that it aped sort of video games, when you kept walking around the spaceship and finding little audio logs. You can tell there's a huge love, not only for games, but just for the actual series and characters as well.
I think highlights for me this year, I really enjoyed Titanfall. I'm not usually a shooters fan, but I am a big fan of being inside a giant robot, blowing stuff up. So that was a good one. And I thought, yeah, it did not a radical twist on the shooter genre, but a nice sort of neat sort of idea, I think, for that one.
My favourite game of the year was Alien Isolation. Firstly, it was one of my favourite licensed games that has ever been developed. It nails perfectly the mood and the look and just the atmosphere of the film Alien. But it doesn't just do that, right? It translates all of the tension and drama from the film into emergent and actually playable gameplay, as in it takes that movie monster feeling and takes every scene of every death that happens in that movie and it makes it something which is threatening to happen to you. And when it does happen to you, it's got the same sort of shock factor and release.
My game of the year was Shovel Knight. Brilliant game. I love retro games, as you know, that's why I do what we do. But yeah, not only do I like old games, but they made a new one and it was objectively one of the best games of the year out of any games. So yeah, if anybody's watching and they can't decide what they want to do over Christmas when they get sick of their parents, Shovel Knight.
My favourite indie game of the year is definitely Gang Beasts, which, if you haven't seen it, it's a sort of multiplayer brawler. It's sort of very cartoony, very violent, but very silly. And you have these sort of jelly-like characters. One of them's wearing a top hat, which obviously is brilliant. And you throw each other off buildings and into pits of fire and all this very daft stuff. And it's just really, really good fun, you know, and it's a great multiplayer experience. And it just sort of proves that, you know, you don't actually need really amazing visuals and $1 million budget to make a game. If you've got an idea that's good enough, you know, and a control system that works, you can produce something that is just fantastic fun to play.
I thought, yeah, I mean, this year's been a really interesting year for indie because I think because it's a kind of a new generation for consoles, I think mainstream games have been kind of reasonably flattish. It hasn't been an amazing year for mainstream games. So I think indie games have really stepped up. You know, just very recently we've had This War of Mine, a really fascinating game looking at the lives of civilians in a really war-torn city and how do you survive. Group mechanics in survival situations is fascinating. It's very grim, it's very dark, it's very troubling. But you know, in the way it analyses war and its effects, I think it's amazing.
An indie game that really grabbed me this year was Gunpoint, which is a PC-only, side-scrolling, film noir-looking kind of game in which you have to rewire building security to steal things from that building. You can pounce on guards and punch them in the face. You can rewire a light switch that opens a door and smacks a guard in the face and knocks him out. You can grab guards and jump through plate glass windows with them. It's just really it's very simple looking, but it's an immense amount of satisfaction you can get from it.
My favourite indie game was Nidhogg, which is, I think I've mentioned on the show before, but it's absolutely fantastic. Two-player fighting game. It looks a little bit quirky. It's got this weird, sort of slightly retro, slightly arty aesthetic, but it all just boils down to the best, like, one-on-one fighting game I've played in forever.
I'd say the new consoles haven't quite hit their stride yet. I think we saw a bunch of sort of exclusives on both sides that, for better or worse, had to be around for launch. But maybe in 2015 I think we're going to see more games that have had a little bit more time in the oven from developers who have not been constrained by having to hit a certain launch window.
As a Nintendo fan, I think this year's been great for Nintendo. We've had Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, Super Smash Bros, Bayonetta 2, Mario Kart, and all the DLC. So I still maintain that as of yet, if you want good games, the Wii U is still the best console out of the three in this generation.
There's really only one game that could have been my standout favourite of this year. In terms of atmosphere, tension, polish and wet your pants terror, Alien Isolation towers above the competition. About 7 foot tall and drooling all over them probably. You're walking down a darkened corridor. The sound of your footsteps is drowned out only by the thumping of your heart. You have a torch, but you're too terrified to turn it on, so every snaking silhouette you see looks exactly like the thing that's hunting you. Suddenly, a noise. You can't be sure whether it was the creaking hull of the decaying spaceship you find yourself on, the hissing of a nearby pipe sorely in need of a janitor's touch, or something much, much worse. You duck into a nearby rec room and scoot under a table, and that's when you see it. Since first bursting, quite literally, onto cinema screens in 1979, H.R. Giger and Ridley Scott's Xenomorph became the embodiment of humanity's fear of the unknown, of deepest, blackest space. But in the years since, due to numerous games, films, and even cuddly toys, its reputation as a cold, killing force of nature has been undermined. Somewhere between the crummy sequels and the frankly awful games, the Xenomorph, despite possessing not one but 2 mouths, lost its bite. After the absolute disaster that was Colonial Marines, it was thought the license was dead and buried. But then along came UK-based developer Creative Assembly, who not only made the franchise scary again, but made it the best it's ever been. Taking its inspiration from the original film, rather than Aliens as many previous games have been wont to do, Alien Isolation stars Amanda, daughter of personal hero of mine, Ellen Ripley, as she searches for traces of her mother's ship, the Nostromo, 15 years after it was last contacted. Her search brings her to the Sevastopol, a recently decommissioned space station. It doesn't take long for Amanda to figure out that all is not well, though the game does take its time to set the scene before introducing you to its main antagonist, the titular extraterrestrial. Whilst there are other enemies on the station, the alien is unique in that it cannot be killed, and if it sees you, it'll eviscerate you instantly. There aren't many games I can recall that leave you feeling completely vulnerable whilst in possession of a flamethrower, but it speaks to Isolation's clever design in that that's never much of a comfort. See, this alien is smart, she's unstoppable, and she's completely terrifying.
I think what's terrifying about the alien is you just can't predict what it's going to do. Like, the Creative Assembly have just embedded this thing's brain with all of these AI routines, and they never quite play out the same way twice. So one time you can hide inside a locker and the alien will just stroll right past you. The second time he'll just tear the door off and he'll just pull you out of it. I think not being able to read what the alien's doing just makes him so unpredictable and scary.
I think for me, the most terrifying bit about Alien is the bit where like this bald, pink, screaming creature like bursts out of a hole in someone's body. As a pregnant woman, I do find that quite unnerving.
The truly scary thing about Alien Isolation is that the alien itself is completely unpredictable. In other games, there are easy ways to outsmart enemy AI and manipulate the game design. Learn patrol routes and wait until you know the coast is clear, climb a ladder, or squeeze into a space you know your pursuers can't follow. But in Alien Isolation, you're afforded no such luxury. There really is no way of telling where the alien might go or when it could pop out of a vent and throw itself at your squishy human parts. Try and crawl into an air duct after it's spotted you and it will haul you out by your ankles. Try and outrun it and you are finished. The only thing you can rely on Sevastopol is your own cunning, and for a generation of gamers raised on hand-holding and near constant autosaves, that is a terrifying prospect. Alien Isolation is a challenging game, but in my opinion, it's a brilliant one. One of the best ones this year, in fact. It won't please players that want something they can actually fight back against, and it may test the patience of those who want something more action-oriented, but as a slice of old-school survival horror, Alien Isolation is the perfect organism.
So that's it for our games of 2014, but what about you? Do you heart Hearthstone, delight in Destiny, or favour Forza Horizon 2? Whatever your picks for this most excellent gaming year, we'd like to hear about them either on Twitter using the hashtag VGN, the Video Game Nation Facebook page, or in the form of a delightful operetta. Join us again next week where we'll take a look at the biggest trends of 2014. And no, that does not include terrifying bum implants. Goodbye.
Thank you.